Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Olivia, and this is Zoltan, and we work for Envoke. So, we're going to talk to you a little bit about the importance of email communications and the way that Envoke actually addresses this. Our first topic is kind of around reputation management and control. So, Zoltan, do you mind telling us why do communications professionals come to Envoke? What problems are they trying to solve? What are they finding in Envoke that they're not finding necessarily in other email platforms?
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Olivia, for having me on this call. I can certainly speak to that as I speak with a lot of customers throughout the year to get their feedback on their workflows, and that helps us build a roadmap to make sure we're shipping good, useful updates for everybody. And part of the discussions, we asked this very same question of why they chose Unbook. Most of our customers have a data in Canada mandate that they're looking for a solution that stores data in Canada. They're migrating away from Mailchimp or Constant Contact, and they need a software that works at least as well as the current software, but with data in Canada. And what we find in this process that when they find Envoke, that it turns out it's not only it works as well as the previous software, but it works better for them because we cater to communications teams versus marketing and sales teams. And the functionality that these teams are looking for is different in Envoke than what you find in Mailchimp and Constant Contact. Are the two big players, of course. One of the big differences is the opt-in versus mandatory message sending. All the software is opt-in sending, so you send an email to an audience and then they can opt out, self-serve anytime. You cannot send them emails later. And Mope has a mandatory message functionality that is used by a lot of our customers that allows them to send important messages, even to those contacts who are otherwise unsubscribed from optional emails. Of course, they need to have some kind of an internal or regulatory obligation to do this. They can just send it all the time, but if there's an internal need, then they can send these messages. A good example would be if you're a post-secondary institution, these mandatory messages could be program changes, could be campus security issues, tuition changes, or even emails internally to the staff and faculty to send messages that they can't automatically opt out from. So they heavily use this mandatory function across the board from all our customers.
I think what's interesting too, I remember chatting with the customer and asking how they would have done that if they didn't have Envoke, because not very many, I don't, to my knowledge, not any other email platforms have this feature. They would have had to go and check each email that bounced and manually try to resend those emails to the right people. So I think that it's great that that's a built-in feature and a key differentiator for sure.
Yeah, basically, especially they have to resend those emails from Outlook. Not they can't even do it from Mailchimp. So there's a big overhead and also room for error that way. So it's just a much more straightforward process to make sure those emails are being delivered if they have to be delivered.
Yeah.
Another thing that people say as they looking into a switch is the aggressive price increases they see with Mailchimp, for example. The prices are changing very often. Sometimes there are hidden prices, there is use functionality. The billing fluctuates month over month. There are features that are there that you pay for that you don't even need. And it's a very sort of complex pricing structure to understand versus the Envoke pricing. If you just go to our pricing page, you say it's a very straightforward pricing that doesn't have a ton of fine print of making it hard to understand. So that's another thing. And the support comes up as another consideration that sometimes we hear that there are some poor support from some of the competitors, either just as a straight up delay before someone gets a response, or sort of the overly heavy reliance on AI that is good in some cases, but sometimes it makes the conversation so it doesn't flow as well. We use human support with some AI supplementation, but by and large, we respond with questions tailored to the actual answers to the questions, examples, short videos. We can do a Zoom call with anybody anytime, and people really appreciate that. If that comes up consistently as one of the things in our reviews, that people appreciate the support. And the last thing I would mention here is the inbox delivery. That also comes up sometimes, that people are just having challenges with too many emails going to spam folders. And of course, we're not saying that every email in Envoke goes to inboxes. No one can promise that, but our inbox delivery rates are really good, because partially because we deal with the communications departments, and they tend to not send the types of commercial emails that can sometimes be flagged as suspicious and spammy. So that's definitely positive when we're talking to customers.
Awesome. I know for communications professionals, reputation management means a lot, obviously. So if you could share with us how exactly Envoke ensures that users are able to manage their reputation effectively, that would be great.
For sure. The reputation management, from my experience, it really means quality assurance and control over both content and functionality for our customers. And of course, there are settings in there to define and lock down fonts and colors, but it goes way beyond that. There are built-in sub-account functionality, which means administrators can control entire departments, where these departments can operate independently, but with an admin oversight, and that gives control over list privacy and list management to make sure that different user groups can't access each other's lists, can't send to each other's lists. So these departments are siloed and connected to a master account. So that's sort of the top level control right there. And then within each of these sub accounts, which in a post-secondary example could be the various departments across different campuses. There are departments for student registration, there are departments for student life, student engagement, student associations. I think McGill University is a client of ours, has close to 200 departments that all use the sub-account functionality to be able to control who has access to what list of contacts, who can subscribe to what, who can unsubscribe from various communications. And within each of the departments, then there are control over content, which is really coming down to the templates management. How, when somebody creates a template, it's possible to set up each section as either editable completely or locked down static component that cannot change. So end users cannot inadvertently make a mistake and upload the wrong logo or change something in the footer or parts of the message that should really just be static. Or there are parts of the template that are editable, but only the content can change, but the styles are locked, which is also very helpful to just control, give flexibility for the content, but not for the styles.
Yeah, an example that kind of comes to mind as well for me is if people are sending newsletters or emails in French, and they're sending it English and French, and they want to keep the style the same, so they send one out in English and they send another one out in French. That's just an example that comes to mind. But yeah, that's great.
Exactly. Let me just say a few more things around that. Just it comes up all the time. It's super important. Things like the subscription management page, when someone goes to update their preferences, so often we see these subscription management pages are this default sort of third-party pages that really look like, it's some generic page, and it's not branded. It doesn't look like anything that the organization would use for their styles. And we make it possible to make that page fully styled, using custom text, custom domain events. And when someone clicks, they don't see one of our domains that they might not recognize. So there's peace of mind from the users that they're dealing with the organization that they know that they should be dealing with. And of course, the other thing that's very important to mention is the user roles management, the control around functionality to make sure that everybody only has access to the features they need. So they can't, if you've got an intern that they can't send an email accidentally with the wrong list because they're inexperienced, they don't know exactly how the software works yet, or designers shouldn't have access to a list of contacts for privacy reasons, for example. So there is control over the functionality itself within the software.
So I know I've heard this a lot in customer calls, and I'm sure you have as well. We love Envoke because it's so much more straightforward than Mailchimp or Constant Contact or whatever else they're using. What do you think customers mean by that?
Right. That's exactly what they say. That's sort of the quote is, it's actually pretty straightforward. Sometimes we get that as just an email coming. We don't even ask sometimes, and they tell us, oh, just so you know, we're in week 4 of using Envoke and everything's working so well. We didn't need to do a lot of reading documents because it was sort of fairly intuitive to get on board.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy because we offer free training for everybody, one-on-one training over Zoom, which is unlimited. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 calls, and until someone tells us that they're really comfortable now to use the software. And so few customers do that because by the time they come to the point where they would need training, they actually figured out how everything works as they go through the interface, as they go through the documents. And that is, I attribute that to the fact that we don't have that sort of feature clutter, the extra functionality that you find with some marketing automation tools, even marketing tools with the revenue ROI measurement or shopping cart integrations, Shopify integrations. There's all sorts of tools in there that are built to try to maximize generating leads, turning prospects into customers, upselling, retaining customers, and none of that exists in Envoke because our customers, their mandate is not to generate commercial revenue. The mandate is to send disseminated information, to send notification messages, informational messages, and the lack of the clutter makes it by default easier to work around the system. But also things like the email editor is a good example. There, I know from looking at some competitors in our research, sometimes it takes numerous clicks as somebody creates an email and gets it ready to be sent out to their list, to go back and forth between now I'm checking the subject line, now I'm going to preview mode, now I'm going to select recipients, now I'm going to send a test email, and all those are different pages. So it's a 5-second load for a page and then you go back. It's a lot of back and forth. We streamlined it into a single page interface where everything happens from one page. It's super quick to load. So that part is a very streamlined workflow. And that's really where people hang out after they set everything up initially. When the lists are imported, forms are set up, everything is configured. Most of the time, people will spend in the editor to create messages, and that's a much more streamlined experience than you would find in most other tools.
Great. So I want to ask a little bit more around customers. Is there a customer story that comes to mind that really stood out to you for someone that had switched over to Envoke?
That's a tough question, because there are just so many stories. Trying to think of something for you. The one that comes to mind is actually two come to mind all of a sudden. So one is a story for UBC, University of British Columbia, and really it's a story of internal growth. There, we had at UBC signed up many years ago with one account, and we had never approached them to say like maybe you should sign up another account and open another department. It all was internal word of mouth that over time more and more departments across the two campuses started to use Envoke, and now we have 80 plus departments using it. And that's a great story for us to hear because that means it's working so well that they're just sort of jumping on board. Say, what are you using? Oh, we use Envoke. Let's try that idea demo, the idea trial, and then let's boom another department. So that when we see this internal growth, that is really good, and that's sort of validation to us that the software does what it needs to do for these teams. It really works. And another thing, the second story that I like to tell is it's from another company, Transportation Association of Canada, where I know when I spoke to them, they mentioned that previously with their previous software, they had to sort of shoehorn their communications strategy, their workflows into how the software works because there were constraints around list management specifically of how the contact lists can be grouped and what the segmentation looks like. And when they did the trial and the demo and the initial onboarding, they told us that this sort of looking at how Envoke allows them to manage subscriptions, either opt-in subscriptions or mandatory subscriptions, how the tagging works, how the custom filtering works, how all those work together. That opened up new ways for them to think about how to communicate with their contacts. So not only that they didn't have to shoehorn their strategy into how it works, but it actually helped give them some kind of inspiration or some ideas of how they can use this new way of list management to their advantage. And that was certainly great to hear.
Okay, so if someone is looking for a new email platform and a lot of this is resonating with them and they're thinking about what are the types of questions I should be asking when evaluating new tools, what would you recommend for them?
All right. So when people are looking for new tools, in my experience, there's a remarkably lot of questions there. There's a lot going on to find the right tool. And it all starts with just talking to the team, figuring out who are the decision makers, who are the stakeholders, so that there's agreement of who's involved in the buying process. So that should be always number one. Then I would recommend just kind of work your way backwards, start looking at the ideal world. What are my requirements? What are my needs? Sort of putting aside how something works right now, even just if I had to start from scratch right now, how would a program work for me? Sort of create your requirements list. And when that's done, start doing research, looking around what are the requirements, what software meet those requirements. And very often the next step before you jump into starting to test out the functionality would be some kind of a security or compliance review. Because it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of time in a trial environment if the IT team is not satisfied that this meets the security requirements, the compliance team is not satisfied it meets the compliance requirements. So that would be sort of a good first step, just to make sure that's all good from security and compliance perspective, and then get into your software, right? So you want to open a trial account if you can, talk to the salespeople, do a demo, then maybe some back and forth to get to the point where the team can now use the software. And then from there, just sort of you look at all the functionality. The key features would be things like, what are the branding control options in there? What are the segmentations options? Integrations options are very important to identify up front what options exist going forward. And that will also help to understand how this is going to be a scalable solution. Is it going to be something that requires a lot of manual management or not? What's the reporting going to look like? Because a new account will have no reports, there's no data. So you want to know what that report looks like later on. Is it monthly, quarterly, annual? How can you share the reports across different departments with the different stakeholders? And then start testing after that things like, set up your email delivery settings with the domain verification and everything to check how the emails go in boxes or not. Make sure that works correctly. And also during this process, you want to look at things like, what's the ongoing support going to look like? Because a lot of times, if companies would give really good support for the first 30 days because they want business, but then later on it's sort of it drops a little bit. So a good way to do that is just to look at reviews, because those are going to be the best. Everybody's website says that the best support and all the medals and everything, but if you look at the reviews, that's when you really find this really honest
feedback
responses from everybody of how it actually works for people after a year or two into the program. And of course pricing. You want to know how much it costs now, how much it costs a year from now. Is there an annual option? Are there discounts available? Can I do pay by e-transfer? Can I add a purchase order in my invoice if I have to? So what are the pricing options for every company has different requirements based on their size, but those are all sort of important to establish upfront.
Yeah, and the pricing point is interesting too, because I know American providers, they can charge you in Canadian dollars, but because of the currency fluctuation, what you're paying every month might differ. So if anyone watching this is a Canadian company and considering Envoke, our pricing is in Canadian dollars, not subject to any sort of fluctuation. So I think that's a pretty good
advantage. There was a period that it happens from time to time. I think last year was a period of 6 months when the exchange rate was a 40% difference in the matter of 6 months, and all of a sudden, even though there was no price increase, just the way the economy and the exchange rates worked, you all of a sudden paid 40% more for the same software. So that's exactly what you're referring to.
Exactly. Awesome. Those are great. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. For those of you watching, if you want to learn more about Envoke, you can check out our website, www.envoke.com. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to follow us on YouTube or on LinkedIn. We're going to post more of these types of content. And if you are actually interested in the platform, we have a free 30-day trial on our website. So we often find the best way to see if it's a good fit for you is to start a trial and play around with it yourself. If you do start that, you also have access to our support if you have any questions as well. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks, Zoltan.
Thank you.